Hi guys, in this video we'll be learning how to make a basic bodice pattern with side darts or breast darts you may call it. If today is your first time of watching my video, you are welcome. Please don't forget to turn on your notification bell so you don't miss out my videos. Subscribe, like and share my videos. To my returning subscribers, welcome back to my YouTube channel. You guys mean a lot to me. And to draft a basic bodice pattern, you are going to be needing the following tools: the pattern paper, scissors, markers, measuring tape, a French curve, a straight ruler, a paper to write notes to calculate your measurements, a pen to write down your measurements. To start with, I folded my pattern paper into two, using the largest part of my body, which is my hip measurement. And this is my center front. And then this my imaginary line, also serves as the starting point and also the shoulder line. Next is to draw our horizontal dimensions from the shoulder to the bust, 12 inches, from the shoulder to the waist, 17.5 inches, from the shoulder to the hip, 25 inches. Next, I'm going to draw my horizontal lines I marked. So I draw the bust line, the waist line, and then the hip line. Now I'm going to be labeling all the horizontal line. This is the shoulder line. This is the bust point. This is the waist line, and this is the hip line. Now is to create the shoulder line and then the neck line. For the shoulder, my shoulder is 17 inches divided by 2 is 8.5 inches. So I mark 8.5 inches on the shoulder line. Next, I'm taking 3 inches for the neck width and 3 inches for the neck depth. So 3 inches for the neck width and then 3 inches for the neck depth. I'm going to drop 1 point down my shoulder line and then connect my neckline. Now to get your armhole line, you are going to divide your bust by 6 and then add 1.5 inch. So my bust divided by 6, I got 7 inches plus the 1.5 inch is 8.5 inches. So I mark 8.5 inches here. First of all, let me mark the shoulder slope. I'm going to draw a line from the neck point to the 1 inch for the shoulder slope. And then to get the armhole line, you are going to divide your bust by 6 and then add 1.5 inches. 42 inches divided by 6, I got 7 inches. Plus 1.5 inch, 8.5 inches. So I mark 8.5 inches straight down here, and this is going to serve as my chest line. So I labeled it as my chest line. And on this chest line, you are going to put the same 8.5 inches you took for the shoulder length here, and connect with straight ruler. So this is now my chest line, my bust line, my waist line, and my hip line. Now I'm going to impute my dart measurement. To mark your dart measurement, you are going to be needing your nipple to nipple measurement or your bust span. And my bust span is 9 inches, and you are going to divide this 9 inches by 2. So 9 inches divided by 2, I got 4.5 inches. So my bust point is 4.5 inches. I'm going to mark 4.5 inches here. Mark it on the waistline. And also mark it on the hip line. Then I'm going to draw a straight line from the bust point to meet the hip. And this line serves as the dart line. This is the dart line. Now on this line, on the bust point, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. And from the hip line, I'm going to go up by 2 inches for the dart. From the bust point, I come down 1 inch. And from the hip line, I went up 2 inches. And on the waistline, I'm going to be taking half an inch on each side of the center line. I took half inch here and half inch here. Now I'm going to connect these points, these 4 points, to form my dart. So now I'm going to be inserting my horizontal measurements, and I'm going to be dividing all my measurements, my horizontal measurements, by 4. I'm going to divide my bust circumference by 4. I'm going to divide my waist circumference by 4, and I'm going to divide my hip circumference by 4. Now my bust circumference is 42 inches. 42 inches divided by 4 is 10.5 inches. So I mark 10.5 inches here on the chest line. And I'm going to mark the 10 inches here too, on the bust point. 10.5 inches, sorry. To the waist, my waist circumference is 40 inches. 40 inches divided by 4 is 10 inches. So I mark 10 inches here, plus this half inch you took on both sides of the dart line. You have to add this 1 inch here to the 10 inches, making 11 inches. So I mark 11 inches here. Go to my hip line. My hip circumference is 44 inches. 44 divided by 4 is 11 inches. And I'm marking the 11 inches here. Here on the hip line, you don't have any dart, so you are not going to add any dart allowance. So this pattern, I'm adding the allowance here. I'm not going to add it when I'm cutting it on any fabric. So I'm adding the allowance here. I'm adding 2 inches allowance. Like this. Now I'm going to connect the edges of the bust, the waist, and the hip. What I'm going to do now is to draw my armhole curve. And to do that, I'm going to find the midpoint of my armhole depth. The midpoint is 4.2. And I'm going to go in by 0.75. I went to 0.75. Then I'll be connecting the points from the shoulder to this point. This is for the front armhole, and this is for the back armhole. So I'm going to connect the front armhole first, and then I connect it Then the back armhole, you just connect from this point. So this is the front armhole and this is the back armhole. Always the front armhole goes inside and the back armhole goes straight to the point like this. Now to the back neckline, I'm going to take 3 inches there width and then 1 inch depth. Then I connect it with my pattern master. Now to the shoulder slope, you are going to add half an inch on the shoulder slope. That serves as the sewing allowance. Now I want to add side dart. To get the side dart, you are going to measure from the chest line to the waistline and then find the midpoint, which is 4 inches. Then you mark half an inch on both sides for the dart, for the side dart. Then you are going to connect the middle leg straight to meet the bust point here, or the bust span. On this bust span, you are going to come down by 1 inch, as shown. Then you are going to connect these 3 lines together. This dart for the seam that you took here, the 1 inch you took here, you are going to mark it down the hemline. And then you are going to connect it straight to the center point. Then I'm going to connect it straight down here because of the seam allowance. So when we added the 1 inch we took for the dart down here, we added it down here so that when sewing your top, you will not be short of fabric down, because if you take the 1 inch here, when you finish sewing the top, you will see that you'll be short of fabric up here. But with this, when you finish sewing, you see that the 1 inch that you put down will come back and you get the same straight line that you marked before. So guys, we have finished drafting the front bodice pattern. I'm going to cut the neck, the back neck, and then I cut the back armhole, and I cut to the side seam, and I cut down here. One more thing, the hemline, you have to add 1 inch hemming allowance. So I put 1 inch here. So I'm cutting. So if you are now joining us for the first time, you are welcome to the Crafty Bee family. Please consider subscribing to my channel, like, share to your loved ones and your family, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to be updated when I upload a new video. Thank you. So guys, this is the front basic bodice pattern. Now I'm going to draft the back bodice. So this is the back bodice pattern. In order not to make this video longer, I decided to mark the horizontal lines, the shoulder, the chest line, the bust point, the waistline, the hip line, and then I drew the vertical line here, and this line is my zipper allowance. So this is my zip allowance, and then this is my shoulder line, and this is my armhole line. Sorry, I have to change the color of the marker because I'm short of the black. Now I have to mark my dart measurement. Now I'm going to mark the dart for the back, and to do that you need your nipple to nipple measurement. My nipple to nipple is 4.5, so I mark the 4.5 here on the bust point, and I'll mark 4.5 on the waistline and 4.5 on the hip line. Now on the chest line, I'm going to come down by 1 inch, and I'm going to connect a straight line down to the hip line. So come to the hip line, you are going to go up by 2 inches. On the chest line, don't forget we came down 1 inch, and then we drew a straight line. So on the hip line, I came up 2 inches. And on the waistline, I'm going to take half an inch on both sides. So I'm going to connect from the point here to this point, to this, and then to the last point here. So this is how to create the back darts. So now I'm going to input the body measurement. My bust is 42 inches divided by 4 is 10.5 inches. So I mark 10.5 inches here on the chest line, and I mark it 10.5 inches also on the bust line. And to my waist circumference is 40 divided by 4, 10 inches. So I'm going to mark the 10 inches here on the waistline, and then 1 inch for this dart allowance. And then to the hip line, my hip is 44 inches. 44 inches divided by 4 is 11 inches. So I mark 11 inches on the hip line. This hip line, you are not going to add that allowance because there's no dart here on the hip line. So now I'm going to add my side seam allowance, and I'm adding 2 inches as I did in the front pattern. 2 inches here, 2 inches here, also 2 inches here on the waistline, 2 inches on the hip line. That's my side seam allowance, and I'm going to connect the line. Sorry. From the bust point to the waistline and to the hip line. Sorry, this line is out. This line is out. This is the 2 inches for the side seam allowance. And I'm going to add 1 inch for the hemming allowance. And I connect. So coming to the neckline, I measure 1 inch by 3 inches. 3 inches width and then 1 inch depth. I connect with my pattern master. And then on the shoulder line, I come down 1 inch for the shoulder slope because our shoulder is not straight, it's a bit curved. It will connect from the neck point to meet the shoulder slope. The armhole line is 8 inches, and I'm going to find the midpoint of this 8.5 inches. So it's 4.2. So I mark the 4.2 here, and I'm going to connect with my armhole curve. And then on the shoulder, I'm going to go up half an inch for the sewing allowance. So as you can see, this is my front pattern. I'm going to cut the front neck, and then I'm going to cut the armhole. So one more thing, because the front bodice pattern have a side that is 1 inch, and I took one and I added 1 inch to the hem allowance and 1 inch for the hemming allowance too. So if you can see, I mark it like so. You see now, this is the chest line, this is the bust line, this is the waist line, and this is the hip line, also the hemming line. So this is it. So we are not going to use this to mark on the back pattern because of the 1 inch I brought down here. So you see, I mark it here. This is the line here. This is the original line. So as you can see, everything is on point. And then I added the hemming, the 1 inch for the hemming allowance here. So what I'm going to do now is to eliminate the bulging at the waistline at our back, because our back is not flat, it's a bit curved. It's a bit curved inside, so we have to eliminate the bulging from here, so that when you sew, you see that your zip relaxed well. I'm going to go in 1/2 inch on the waistline, and here at the edge of the zip line, I'm going to mark also 1/2 inch. So let me connect it. From here, you are going to connect this line from this 1/2 inch. You are going to connect it with a straight line down on the hem line, and you are going to connect it also from here to meet the neck line. And the inside, you are going to connect from this 1/2 inch to meet this hem line, and then you connect it also to meet the neckline here. So I'm going to connect now. This is our new zip line. So I'm going to connect this neck to here. So this is going to cut off, and this is also out. The new zipper line is this. So I'm going to cut now. This pattern, I've already added the same allowance, the hemming allowance, everything. So when you are cutting it on your fabric, there's already same allowance and everything added. So this is how the back bodice pattern look like. So guys, we have come to the end of our bodice pattern. So this is how to create a bodice pattern. This is the front, the center front, this is the center back. So you can use this pattern to create any dress or top of your choice. As you can see, this line here, I marked the wrong line, so I corrected it by blocking this line. If you find this video helpful, please subscribe to my channel so you'll be able to see more of my upcoming videos. Thank you for watching. Thank you. Goodbye.